excited to be joining with you guys today virtually in a kids cooking class. And I hope that you guys have your little kids, your big kids, or if you're just a big kid yourself, which my husband is definitely that. So hopefully you have your big kids with you, your little kids, and everything in between. And I'm excited because my little sous chef is going to be joining me for the second recipe. We have two recipes today. We have a protein cereal, and it can be made with protein powder, or if you're not really loving a protein powder for kids, you can use peanut flour or oat flour. I believe will work just as well. I haven't actually tried it, but most of the time I'm usually right on swap outs. So then the second recipe is going to be our animal crackers. This is a recipe that Maddie is absolutely obsessed with. I created the recipe a few weeks ago. We've made them about 10 times. So I guarantee you your little ones will love them as well. For the cereal, we're going to make a Cinnamon Toast Crunch cake cereal, and we're going to make a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup cereal. Now, if you guys are like me, I love Reese's Peanut Butter Cup cereal. It brings me back to my childhood. So that's why I kind of thought about, okay, what do kids like? This was the cereal, the thing that I ate my entire childhood. So if you want to make both cereals, you can make both in one right now. You don't have to really even do much as far as changing out, except for one ingredient is the only thing that you need to make them different. So choose which cereal you want to make, or make both of them. If you're going to make both at the same time, you'll have to double all of the ingredients, and then I'll tell you where to kind of split it. If you want to make one cereal or the other, the only difference is for the chocolate peanut butter, you'll need cocoa powder, 2 tablespoons. If you want to make the Cinnamon Toast Crunch one, at the very end, you'll need some cinnamon, and that's it. So just cocoa powder or cinnamon, or you can make both. I actually am just going to do the chocolate peanut butter because I just made the Cinnamon Toast Crunch one this morning, and I will show you what it looks like at the end. So we're going to get started on our cereal, okay, guys? So we're going to start with 2/3 cup of protein powder. Now, protein powder, like I said, if you want to replace it for this recipe, I believe that oat flour or peanut flour should work. I haven't actually tried it. But I like this Mom Fuel. It's by, the brand is Mom Sanity, because I know the person, the creator of it, her name is Emily, and her husband is a naturopath doctor. And so she is super, super into fitness, health, nutrition. She also loves the Lord. But more than anything, her ingredients are so spot on, and she's very meticulous about everything that gets put in. So when I found out about this, I was like, okay, it's dairy-free. It's plant-based protein, 20 grams of protein. I was like, this is what I want to use if I'm going to use a protein powder at all, especially for Maddie. So any kind of protein powder that you have, though, will work. So go ahead and do 2/3 cup. Now, if you want to double the recipe and make both cereals, you'll want to do 2/3 cups, but do it twice. So that would be 1 1/3 cup. So 2/3 cups of protein powder in a bowl. We're going to start with all of our dry ingredients first and mix them together. Then we have 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Now, cocoa powder is going to make the chocolate peanut butter. If you're doing the Cinnamon Toast Crunch, leave this out. So 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And who doesn't like chocolate? Everybody likes chocolate, right? And then we have some salt and some baking soda. We have 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and we have 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Not baking powder, baking soda. So you could add a little bit more salt, a little bit less salt according to your taste. But I did a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Then we are going to add our sweetener. Now, there is, no, not for this recipe. I was going to say there's honey. There is protein powder, though. So if you feel like your protein powder is really sweet, you can leave out the sweetener. But I'm going to add some sweetener. This protein powder isn't too sweet. So I'm going to do a 1/4 cup of sweetener. Whoops, a little bit more than a 1/4 cup. And then we're just going to give this a good stir because this is all of our dry ingredients. And I'll go through them again real quick while we're stirring. 2/3 cup of protein powder, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder if you're doing the chocolate cereal, 1/4 cup of sweetener, dry sweetener of any kind. I use monk fruit sweetener for this. You could do stevia, you could do any kind of dry sweetener you like. Coconut sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Then we are gonna mix it all together, and these are our dry ingredients. Now, if you doubled everything to make both of the cereals at once, you would just do 1 1/3 cup protein powder, 1/4 cup cocoa powder, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking soda. I'm just trying to help you out if you're doubling it. Sean has a question.
Can you sub egg for flax egg?
Yes, you should be able to for this recipe.
And what sweetener are you using?
So I'm using monk fruit sweetener for this recipe, and I get it from Costco in a really big bag. So it's pretty inexpensive. I think I get a massive bag for like $10, and I like it the best for this recipe. So then we have our 2 wet ingredients. Really simple. See how simple this is? We have 1 egg. So if your kids are cooking with you, Maddie's 2 and she can crack an egg. You just have to be patient. If it goes all over the place, no problem. We'll just get a new egg, right? But it's good to let kids get their hands dirty and do this part, even though as moms we like to take control of that. So 1 egg, and then we have peanut butter. So you could do peanut butter, almond butter, sunflower butter, or sunseed, I think it is sunflower butter, if you can't do nuts. So I'm gonna use a small spatula and get my peanut butter out. So we did 1 egg and 1/3 cup of peanut butter, or 2/3 cup if you're doubling the recipe. 1/3 cup peanut butter. That's what I'm putting in there. And then we're just gonna stir this up. And it should form kind of like a dough really quickly. Remove my measuring or my rolling pin so you can see it. And it'll just take stirring a little bit, and you'll see it starting to kind of turn into a dough. If your protein powder is causing it to be a little bit dry, or you're finding that it's not really coming together as a dough, or maybe it's just really, really wet, then add a little bit more oat flour, peanut flour, protein powder, whatever dry you're using, whatever base instead of the protein powder. And if you're finding that it's a little too wet, like it's just not really coming together, try, or I already said add more oat flour or protein powder. But if you're finding that it's a little bit too dry, so like not coming together at all, add a little bit more peanut butter, like 1 more tablespoon. And it should come together nicely. We got an eggshell in there. And I don't even have a kid with me right now. Okay, so now you see I'm getting my hands in there, and I'm just kind of getting it mashed up together like that with my hands. So that's what you want to do. You want to kind of get in there with your hands. And that's way more fun than stirring it, isn't it? And so what that does is it just kind of gets it crumbly. And so what it should look like is if I squeeze it in my hands, it should form like a, kind of like a dough ball.
Cookie dough.
Yeah, cookie dough almost. But a little bit drier than cookie dough. So it's not gonna be perfectly holding together in a dough ball. It'll kind of be like wet sand. So in your fingers, just like wet sand. So what you'll wanna do is if you have parchment paper, you can get that out, or a baking mat, or anything that, even a foil lined baking pan.
Should you add cinnamon yet?
Nope, don't add cinnamon yet. So if you're doing the cinnamon cereal, leave that until the end. So we're gonna do all the dough, kind of pour it out onto your baking mat or your parchment paper, and we're gonna get that all kind of work together. Now, you have 2 options here, and I'm gonna tell you what my personal favorite option is because I like things to be really easy. You can either kind of form it together into a dough ball, kind of like you would make cookies and roll them out. Okay, so that's one option. You can take our rolling pin, you can kind of roll it out here on the baking mat or the parchment paper. Just make sure you're rolling it on something that you'll want to bake it on so that you don't have to move it. Okay, so we're going to kind of roll it out, and this is option number 1. You don't have to do this part, you can just watch. If you want to do the simple option, the really easy one, then I'm going to show you that next. Okay, So now that we kind of rolled it out, you want to get it as thin as you can. Don't forget, if you are doubling everything, you'll want to double the nut butter to 2/3 cup and 2 eggs. Then I'm going to take a pizza cutter or a knife, and you'll just want to cut lines in it. So however big or small you want your cereals to be. Okay, so we're just going to cut some lines, and I'll show you what this looks like. So I cut lines down the dough. Can you guys see that? Then I'm going to do it the other way. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to turn out just like this. Little bit bites of cereal. And you're just going to eat it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. But you can do it as pretty as you'd like. And then this is going to form little tiny squares. Okay? So just like this. And the end pieces don't have to be perfect squares. So just like that. Then we're going to put it on our baking mat or our baking tray, our mat on our tray, and we're going to bake it for 5 minutes. Now, if you don't want to do this where you rolled it out and cut it into squares, especially if you make this recipe a lot, what you can do is you can just take your dough and you can break it up into just crumbles, just like granola almost, okay? So see how I have, it's like almost like a crumble? So I just crumbled the dough just all over my baking sheet pan, just like that. And then I bake this for 5 minutes. So I'm going to put this in the oven for 5 minutes. Then I'm going to take it out and I'm going to kind of move the squares just a little bit just so that they can get all nice and crisp, the whole square. Or if you do the granola style, I'm going to kind of just mix it up a little bit on the pan and then put it back in the oven for 5 more minutes, 5 to 8 more minutes, just until it's golden brown. So you just want to check on it after a total of 10 minutes and make sure that it's not too brown. If it is, take it out and it'll get nice and crispy when you take it out of the oven. If you're finding that it's not quite done at 10 minutes, then you'll say, okay, needs a few more minutes added on to that. Because what you want is, you want your cereal to be crumbly, kind of like, you know, a box cereal or granola. Because then when you put milk on it, or you put it in yogurt, or you put it on a protein shake, which is what I do, then it won't be limp and kind of soggy. It'll be perfect texture, which is nice and crispy. So I'm gonna put this in the oven for 5 minutes. I'm gonna set my timer, kind of move it around a little bit just so it doesn't get burned, and then I'm gonna pop it back for 5 to 8 more minutes, okay? All right. Oh, 350 degrees. Okay. Now, you might wonder, so that's 350 degrees. You might wonder, why do I have to move it around at 5 minutes? You don't necessarily. I actually tested it out where I didn't check on it at all. I just set it for 10 minutes for this one, and it turned out great. But the only thing is that if you don't move it around and your oven's really hot or your pan is dark, it could burn on some spots. So by checking it and moving it around a little bit and separating the squares or separating the granola, it prevents any burning from happening, so that it just gets crispy all over, but it doesn't burn. So that's why I check it and move it around, okay? So that one is all done. We're gonna check on it halfway through cooking, and then if you're done with the cinnamon one, what you'll wanna do, if you have the cinnamon one that you made, once it's done cooking completely, then you'll wanna take 1 teaspoon, let's see, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1 tablespoon of sweetener. Mix it together in a little jar or a bowl. 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 tablespoon sweetener. Make a cinnamon and sugar mixture and just kind of stir it together. And then pour it all over your cereal when it's hot out of the oven. Make sure it's hot so that, and you might want to have a grown-up help you if you're doing this, you know, if you guys are kids out there doing this. When it's hot, just pour it all over, and then the cinnamon and sugar, or in this case, monk fruit sweetener, will stick to the cereal. So that one is your Cinnamon Toast Crunch. The chocolate peanut butter is going to be in squares in the oven, and we're going to check on it in a few minutes. But now I'm going to have my sous chef help me. She's going to come in and we're going to make her favorite animal cracker cookies. Now, these are amazing. If you are thinking this is just a kid food or a kid snack, No, these are perfect for adults too, because it is like a craving crusher. It's like something sweet that's just crunchy. And I know all you out there are eating your kids' animal crackers anyway. So now you have healthy ones to snack on. So let's see if she'll join me. Hey, Maddie, do you want to cook with Mama? Maybe she'll just help me with the rolling out part.
Do you want to taste some?
Maybe she could just help me with the rolling out part.
Okay.
She's not wanting to come right now. She's 2, so hey, whatever will be with a 2-year-old at the moment. All right, so we're gonna get started on the animal cracker cookies. And I don't know about you guys, but this is something that's a favorite from my childhood. So, like I said, just like the cereal, this is why I created it, as I thought, what did I love when I was little? Animal crackers. So I'm gonna do 1 3/4 cup of oat flour. Oat flour is just old-fashioned oats ground into a flour. So if you don't have any on hand, take old-fashioned oats, your oatmeal, and grind it into a flour in a blender, a food processor, until it reaches the consistency of a flour. I buy mine on Amazon, so you can buy them, or you can make your own. Okay, Maddie, we're gonna have you pour this in another bowl, please. 1 cup. Okay, and then you do 1 3/4 cup. So we're gonna do a 1/2 cup. She wants the pink one. Okay, can you pour that in the bowl, please? Thank you. 1 3/4 cup oat flour. Good job. Then we're gonna do this one too.
Can I ask a
Right in
question?
there. Yes, you can.
What is monk fruit sweetener? What makes it better or safer than other sweeteners?
So that's a good question. I'm gonna answer that one when we're done with this portion. But that's a really good question. I'll cover my favorite sweeteners kind of towards the end. So this is coconut sugar that we're using in this one. And the coconut sugar, I did 1/2 cup of sweetener. So I did coconut sugar, just kind of change it up for this one and show you guys an option for both sweeteners. Okay, so then we're gonna do a 4 teaspoon of salt. Can you get a little salt here? There you go. Okay, 4 teaspoons. 4 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Hey, Maddie, can you try that? Can you scoop this in? 1/2 teaspoon baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder. Okay. We're gonna get the other one, baking powder. So the baking soda and the baking powder, here you go, honey. You got that? That just helps the cookies rise so that they get puffy, a little bit puffy, and it helps the cookies to be soft so that they don't turn out too soft, but you don't want them hard like a rock, right? They can't bite into. So that's what the baking soda and the baking powder does. Then we're gonna add some applesauce or coconut oil, 1/4 cup. So I did coconut oil here instead of applesauce because for Maddie, she's 2. So I want to get a little bit of healthy fat into her. So if you're with little kids and you're like, how do I get a little bit of healthy fat into them? 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil is perfect. Or applesauce, because that makes them lower calorie, but still absolutely delicious. So 1/4 cup of coconut oil or applesauce, and then a 1/4 cup of honey or maple syrup. I'm gonna get the honey now, okay? This is Maddie's favorite part. Do you like to do the honey? Yeah, okay. Can you hold this for me? All right, so I'm gonna go over the ingredients again real quick while we're stirring this up.
Honey,
Okay,
Maya.
Yeah, Maya and the bee. Good job. There we go. And just for all of you moms out there who go through a lot of honey, this was from Walmart online. Free shipping, massive, $10. So for anyone out there that's like, wow, honey is so expensive, well, you can just look around and find a good deal. Oh, you put some of your cereal in there too. Perfect. Okay. So that is going to be a special ingredient. We got some cereal in there. So we're going to just mix this up, and I'm going to go through the ingredients again. Can you stir that up? Can you give it a stir? Give it a stir, stir, stir. Good job. All right. So we have 1 3/4 cup of oat flour, 1/2 cup of sweetener, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and baking soda, 1/4 cup of, okay, you're all done? Thank you, honey. Good. Can I have a kiss? Good job. Okay, so 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil or applesauce, and then 1/4 cup of honey or maple syrup. It doesn't matter. Just any kind of sticky sweetener, even agave would work. Then you could do a teaspoon of vanilla extract, which I don't have any right now, but if you have it, it'll add that like slight subtle vanilla flavor. So if you have it, you can add it. Then I'm just gonna stir it up and we're gonna get it so that it forms a ball of dough. Now, if you're finding that this is a little bit dry, you might have to add 1 more tablespoon of applesauce. So again, you're seeing how I'm stirring it up with a spoon, and then after I do that, I'm getting in there with my hands and I'm mixing it up. Why do I use my hands? Because they're really good kitchen tools. It's sometimes nice to just be able to feel the dough and know if it's coming together and if it's really sticking together well, and you can feel it with your hands. So that's why I'm using my hands. I like to start with a spoon though, just to make sure that I can add all my ingredients without getting my hands dirty. Then once I've added everything, I get in there and I mix it up with my hands. Okay, so this is coming together really good. Now, if you're seeing that your dough isn't forming a ball like this, add 1 more tablespoon of applesauce or coconut oil, 1 more tablespoon, and that will help it come together. Sometimes with oat flour, your oat flour, if you make your own, can be a little more coarse and dry, so that's why you need a little bit extra of the liquid. Okay, so now it's gonna form a ball, just like that. And you should have a nice ball there that you can roll out. So again, get a baking mat or some parchment paper or some foil, and we're gonna roll this dough out. Okay, so Sean just is gonna be reading off some questions to me when I'm rolling this out here. And so I have my dough that I kind of formed into a ball here. I'm gonna take my rolling pin and I'm gonna roll it out. If you feel that it's sticking to your rolling pin, you can take some oat flour and sprinkle it on, just like that, and that will help it to not stick. Or you can take another piece of parchment paper and put it on top of the dough, and that will prevent it from sticking as well. So I'm gonna move these a little bit. So it should never be sticking. It should always be able to kind of roll out without sticking, and if it does start to stick, just use a little bit of oat flour or parchment paper on top. Okay, and I'm just gonna kind of turn the mat, but you can just kind of roll it however is easiest for you, just so that it comes to a nice thin kind of layer of dough there. Oh, and our cereal's done. So Sean's gonna grab the cereal out. And I actually set that for 10 minutes because I had a feeling that I might not remember at 5 to take it out, and I didn't. But looks like it turned out great. The only thing, like I said, about breaking it up at 5 minutes is the fact that it kind of will crisp up around the edges of the squares. So we're gonna check on our cereal in just a minute. We're gonna finish these animal crackers. So now we have our dough rolled out, just like this, in a thin layer. And then we're gonna take cookie cutters. Now I have little animals that I found on Amazon for $8, and they are precious. And they also are really easy to pop out because they have a little button. So I linked them on my dish list on Dashing Dish. It's called Dish List. It's at the bottom of the website. So I linked them there. But if you don't have these or you can't find them, just use little cookie cutters or even Play-Doh cookie cutters because they're small. So that's the perfect size for these animal crackers. So now we're just gonna cut them out and just pop them. If you have these exact ones, they just pop right out. And then we're gonna lay them on a parchment lined baking pan. So if you don't have parchment paper or you don't have a baking mat, you can do foil and spray it with cooking spray. Make sure you spray it with cooking spray or it'll stick. Parchment paper and baking mats don't stick, so that's the nice thing. So we're just gonna cut out as many little cute animal crackers as we can get with this dough. Then once we've used up all the dough, just like sugar cookies, we're gonna roll it back into a ball and roll out the rest of the extra dough and start over until all the dough is used up. Then we're gonna bake the cookies, once you have them all on a pan, for 8 to 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes. And really all you're looking for is that they're very lightly golden brown. You don't want them really dark brown or they'll burn on the bottom. And you don't want them to be too soft or else they won't kind of crisp up. But they crisp up just perfectly. Now, something fun you can do is once you cut these all out and put them on the pan, before you bake them, sprinkle some sprinkles on there. So we just have those little tiny dot sprinkles. My friend Dana gave me some organic natural sprinkles. I don't even know where she got them. But so you can find really clean eating sprinkles now. I just use these ones from Walmart that are like the little nonpareil mix. So that's really cute to just do a little sprinkling, and you can even kind of just lightly press them on so that they stay on the cookie. And then bake them, and they'll come out and they'll stick just like this. So that's just a fun little accent. You don't have to do it. Now, another option to make it fun for kids is to make these chocolate. And I did that the other day, and if Maddie, being 2, she didn't like them then because it was chocolate, so she wasn't familiar with it. So I just added like 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder, and so it just gave it a brown hint and a little bit of a cocoa flavor. So that's another option. You could also dye the dough with a little bit of food coloring just to make like a colored one. But these are great because a few ingredients, you saw how easy it was. They bake perfectly every time. They don't fall apart or crumble. I'm sure they can hold up just fine to icing if you made some frosting. So this is like my go-to cookie recipe, and it's a really fun thing to do in quarantine with your kids. And healthy too. So I give her these like for breakfast. They're made with oat flour, honey, coconut oil, or applesauce. And that's just about it. So now I'm gonna talk about sweeteners really quickly, since that question got brought up. And I have 2 sweeteners I use today. One is monk fruit sweetener, one is coconut sugar. I also like baking stevia. I like the liquid drops of stevia. I like real maple syrup. I like agave syrup. And I like honey. So what do these all have in common? They're all natural forms of sweetener. So the reason that I personally like monk fruit sweetener or stevia in my recipes is that my sugar and insulin levels usually spike from any type of sugar, even a natural sugar. So I have to kind of watch my sugar and how much I incorporate in any recipe. So I like to use monk fruit sweetener and stevia for that reason. It just keeps my blood sugar stable, and it has no added calories, but they are natural sweeteners. Monk fruit is a fruit that they derive from, and stevia is an herb. Coconut sugar, maple syrup, honey are all obviously natural sweeteners as well. I would not recommend white sugar just because it's so processed. There's a lot of chemical treatment that's happening to it, and it's just really far from even being natural, because you know that real natural sugar is brown. So once it turns white, you wonder why. So I do coconut sugar, which is brown, for Maddie a lot of times, and any kind of natural sweetener is great for kids, as well as stevia and monk fruit sweetener. I use all of them for Maddie and for myself, and for Sean. So now going back to the cereal, if you have taken your cereal out and you had the squares, okay? Now you might be thinking, all right, you're like me, I didn't take it out of the oven at 5 minutes. Oh no, what do I do? That's okay. What that will do is taking it out is you can kind of separate the squares. But if you take it out now, you're like, oh, well, how do I separate them? It's really easy. You can either just pull them apart with your hands gently, or you can take a pizza cutter and retrace the lines that we already made and just help them separate. So if you see what I mean, you don't really have to take it and check it and scramble it up at 5 minutes, but I recommend doing it. It will turn out perfect if you do. If you don't, you'll just have to kind of recut things just to separate it. And also, if you're finding that it seems a bit soft, do not worry. It will harden up as the air hits it. It will crisp up. But if you're like, I don't know, it needs a few more minutes. I only did 10 minutes here, so I'm probably going to pop it back in the oven for another 2 to 3. Because what you want is, this is a little bit soft. It will crisp up as time goes on and the air hits it. but you want it to be really nice and crisp, just like a box cereal. So I'm gonna add a few more minutes in the oven, and that will crisp this one up. And then for your granola type cereal, which this is so easy, I'll make it like this every time. All you have to do is kind of just break it up when it comes out of the oven and let it sit in the hot pan, and it will crisp up. And talk about delicious. It is a clean eating, low carb, healthy granola. Any questions that we got?
Were the cookies the same temperature in the oven?
Yes, 350 degrees for the cookies as well. So that's a good question. For the bigger cookies, you know, like say you did a really big cookie cutter, it might need like 1 or 2 more minutes. But we have 8 to 10 anyway. So the little cookies I did 8 minutes. Bigger, you might want to do 10 minutes. Any other questions? If you guys have any questions, you can ask them in the comments, and then that way we can answer them for you. But you can see how simple this was. I mean, so easy that anybody can do it with their kids. And the nice thing too is that really you don't need a lot of ingredients. So especially during quarantine, that's really helpful. Now for the cereal, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue to make this because I loved it. I made it one time for making the recipe, and then one other time just to put on my protein shakes and yogurt and stuff. I'm just gonna make probably a triple batch. And I'm just gonna spread it out and just crumble it up so it's really easy. And then you can store it in room temperature, like a mason jar or a Ziploc bag, an airtight container for about, I'd say 10 to 12 days. And if you're not gonna use it all up by then, put it in your freezer in a Ziploc bag, and you can store it for like 6 months in your freezer. When you take it out, it might be a little bit cold and icy, so just let it thaw out a little bit on your counter for a little bit, and then it'll be perfect and ready to go for cereal.
Allie asked, we made our own oat flour and the dough is a little too sticky. What can we add?
Okay, so if it's too sticky, you can always add more oat flour. Just like I showed how you sprinkled on the oat flour on the top to kind of get it so it's not sticky. Just keep doing that, and you might feel like you're adding a lot, but eventually it will form a nice, pliable dough that you can cut out really nicely. I do recommend buying your own oat flour, only because unless you have a really good blender or you do it in the food processor, sometimes the coarseness of homemade, it makes the texture a little bit different. So if you have picky eaters, it's a little bit tough to swing it. So that what I found, like with Maddie, I have to buy oat flour because it gets so nicely ground up and fine that it just comes together just like white flour, and you wouldn't know the difference. Oat flour is incredible. It's so good for you. It is high in fiber, high protein. We know it's from whole grain oats, which is really good heart healthy ingredient. And so it's just all around like a powerhouse flour, and you can make it, like I said, you don't have it.
How long does the cereal stay good for?
So the cereal stays good for about 10 to 12 days, room temperature, freezer if not, for about 3 to 6 months. But it won't last that long, I promise you that. So like I said, if you find that your cereal is a little bit hard or soft, throw it back in the oven for a few more minutes. But this is kind of how mine came out. And I'm gonna throw it back in the oven because it's just a hair soft for me. But if you're finding ever that, like with any kind of recipe that has protein powder, for example, that it's not coming together just how you like, a lot of times protein powders are a little bit different in, there's, whey protein powder, there's plant-based, there's all different kinds. So just work with the recipe a little bit until it forms a dough. So add a little more nut butter, a little applesauce, what have you, just until it comes together in a dough is what you're looking for there. And if you have little broken pieces, they're delicious, so don't worry about that. All right, well, this is really fun, you guys. Next week, we're gonna do a meal planning cooking show. So it won't be as fun for the kids, but it will be really, really helpful, I hope, for everybody who's wondering, how do you actually meal plan at your house? So I'm going to be making 3 meals that are perfect to make for the entire week, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and we're going to be talking about some of my favorite meal planning tips and tricks, and it'll be a lot of fun, but also hopefully really helpful. And that's our last cooking class, virtual cooking class next week. So hopefully you guys have fun today with my little sous chef. You want to show them your shirt?
So we should.
Show them your matching shirt? Yeah. You got a matching shirt? Oh, Mama.
Can you say goodbye to everybody?
Can you say, I'm Maddie?
I'm Maddie.
And say, this is my mom. This is my mommy. So the other day she was cooking and with me and she said, I'm Maddie and this is my mommy. So she was doing her own little cooking show. All right, well, can you say bye to everyone?
Say bye.
Thank you everyone for joining me. If your kids are with you joining, then thank you so much for joining. And it was a lot of fun. And I hope you guys learned how fun healthy eating and healthy baking can be. We can be really, really healthy and still enjoy lots of yummy treats, right? So that's what I'm teaching this one from an early age. And so it's awesome to all you parents out there that are doing the same. We're in this together, quarantine, healthy eating and all. Thank you for joining me, guys. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next Monday.